So we are joined by Professor Chankum from the Middle East Institute in DC. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Moroccan initiative, the Atlantic Initiative, and a lot about Morocco's energy sector and how it's growing and diversifying its energy portfolio. Professor Michael, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome, Naufel. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. During the conversation earlier, you mentioned some very interesting facts about how the Moroccan initiative can be of interest for the whole region.
Yes.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
I'd be very happy to. I think it's extending the Moroccan success story on a regional level. But I think where Morocco exercises a very important leadership through respecting everyone and using with dignity and mutual benefit. I mean, the first place we saw this was OCP Africa program, which is astounding success across 12 subsidiaries, 12 different nations, and then 4 other nations in Africa, where actually reaching out to farmers, listening to them, understanding their local needs, like what Al Mutmir does here, and saying, okay, let's help you for what your specific needs. And then you see the crops increase in Senegal, crop yield increase in Ethiopia, crop yield increase in Nigeria, and on and on and on. And now, of course, building fertilizer plants. And we see similar things that Morocco can do on a grander level with Morocco's success in renewable energy and creating resilience. I mean, I think the end goal is you can see Morocco being part of a larger ecosystem, just as Morocco is now an important exporter of fruits and vegetables to Europe. Europe relies on Moroccan fruits and vegetables. And Morocco is the exporter of the 2 most popular selling cars in Europe, and in fact even the Chinese parts that are inside those cars are made in Morocco. So what we're looking at is that being replicated in Africa in a way that's mutually beneficial, that West Africa can become a producer of agriculture and products and industrial goods for export, that they could employ Africans, create more GDP, and then export revenues. And but that starts with helping to build resilience across these boundaries. For example, Côte d'Ivoire exports electricity to Mali, but when there's a drought and there's not hydropower, they shut off the electricity to Mali. Then that affects Mali, and Mali doesn't export food to Niger, etc. Now, food, you need water, which is electricity, energy, power, fertilizer, power. So Morocco can do a lot in helping these countries become more resilient with natural gas, which we know, but with the pipeline, with renewable energy. So I think the initiative is quite visionary, and I fully endorse it. And I think Morocco is providing the kind of leadership that countries on the other side of the Atlantic, particularly the United States, could then participate in as partners on a win-win basis of mutual benefit.
Yes, and to this point, like we heard a lot of talk lately, especially from the Moroccan side, that Morocco is kind of a springboard or like a gateway for a lot of countries, especially the United States on the other side of the Atlantic.
Right.
How can this initiative be of interest in this regard?
Well, I think there's a lot of interest, but I think the American business world needs to understand Morocco better. If you've flown in a plane that was built recently, it has Moroccan components in that. When I tell American businessmen this, they're quite surprised. They're also unaware of what's going on in the business sector. So, in let's say automotive or in other things. So, part of what we're doing at MEI, at the Middle East Institute in Washington, is helping to create that awareness and build these bridges, because I think the U.S. has expertise and capital and companies of scale that there can be a symbiosis between what the American companies have to offer, and the skills and vision that Morocco brings on the ground.
Yes. Obviously, the Moroccan-American relationship date back to the 18th century, has a lot of history.
Yes.
How do you see this coming in the future?
Right. Well, I see we have a new administration coming in Washington, so it will be up to that new administration to decide. But we do have an indication because the Trump administration was in power once before. And of course, it was the Trump administration that recognized Morocco's sovereignty over the southern provinces. And I think that was a game changer. We see that way recently. In October, President Macron was in France, and so France has moderated its position. So I see that was to me a very watershed moment, and my hope is that the new administration will realize will build on that. Will realize Morocco's central role in defense matters, security matters, promoting economic prosperity in the region. And I think it's critical as America has to start developing this wider Atlantic understanding that the transatlantic relationship is south. And when you look at the map, on the west, on the African side, Morocco is the center piece of the puzzle.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor.
You're
I promise
quite
you not
welcome.
to be very long.